So this week, editing, and this is something I feel so strongly about. And I want to say that I would think a few years ago, I did not love editing in the way that I do now. I am on what I would call the fourth major structural edit of my novel, which is the final one before I will submit it to agents. Now, here's the thing about editing and what I've discovered in the hundreds of writers that I have met over the years. So many of them want to write a first draft and be done with it. They think that that's how it works. Now, I would say some of the most profound discoveries that I have made and the most important improvements that I have made have been done in the editing process. And I'm not just talking about tweaking a word here or there, cutting and pasting a paragraph, moving it from the beginning of the chapter to the end. I'm talking about writing entirely new scenes that before I had editorial feedback, I would not have even considered. So here's what I want to encourage. If someone makes a suggestion and your first reaction is absolutely no way, do it anyway. What I have discovered in writing scenes that have been suggested, scenes that I would not have written, that I would not have even come up with, and also scenes that at the beginning I would not have known how to write, by writing them, I have slowly increased my repertoire as a writer and of course my confidence. The bigger your repertoire, the bigger your confidence. And that is just huge when we're talking about an artistic process. If there's confidence, if there's a sense of, hey, I can do anything, just tell me what you need, it really makes the writing process feel a lot more pleasurable. So editing. I want to dig into two key questions just to slowly open up what can be quite a tightly closed box for people. And I really want to open your minds to making big changes and to just asking people what they think and just doing their suggestions. Even if you say to yourself, look, I'm not going to put this in the novel, just write it anyway and see what happens. So the first question really comes out of what I've discovered as myself as a writer by making a change that has been suggested. And the change that I'm thinking in my novel is a really significant change. It's a change that I would not have made, I would not have even wanted to make, okay? But in making that change, I discovered something about my capability. And it feels like one of the best things about my novel now. This change that I wouldn't have done, and I never even would have even come up with the idea. So thinking about this idea of the kind of writer that you are and the kind of writer that you might discover that you are when you do an edit. So imagine doing an edit. Imagine that that edit is going to show you something about the kind of writer that you could be, okay? So there's this potential writer that you could be, which lies on the other side of an edit. So I want you to spend 2 minutes imagining what kind of writer lies on the other side of a significant edit. So imagine the kind of writer that has something that you currently don't have. So what kind of writer could you be after making a significant edit? Okay, 2 minutes. So at the beginning, I felt quite challenged by that one. I didn't have an idea that immediately came up as soon as I set the timer. So for me, when that happens, I just start with writing the exercise. So I began with, after making a significant edit, I would be a writer. And essentially, it's really helpful because that can be a way in if you're not sure how to approach an exercise. It sort of gives your brain a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you go into it. So straight away, I came up with, I would be a writer with more ideas. There would no longer be rooms that I'm afraid to go into. And I really relate to this. When I wrote the first draft of my novel and I look at how I structured it, I look at what the characters were doing, yeah, they were completely limited. They were limited by what I felt I could do as a writer. And they were limited by what my current vision was at that time. I remember that the characters were having lots of conversations where they were keeping things really hidden. They weren't saying what they really meant. And I was making excuses to myself, thinking, oh, I'm being quite subtle here. I'm not being overt. These conversations are really interesting. But here's what I mean about the editing process. By being asked to go into a place where I say more, I try that out as a writer. And so now my conversations, they're so much fuller. And I realized that I was in denial, that now my characters, they're speaking their mind. They are really digging deep in the way that they express themselves. And that can only make it a richer experience for the reader. And again, this is where I came up to. I put, the narrative would be brave. It would take the plunge I've been avoiding, and it would take the reader into a new realm. So again, I definitely have this feeling, essentially from reading other writers' work and knowing that there are suggestions that I could make. As a reader, there was a sense of wanting more. So if someone has suggestions for where you could go deeper with your novel, if you refuse to explore those suggestions, you're essentially refusing to allow your novel to have that capability to take your reader into a much deeper realm, into a much deeper reading experience. So there are so many things to gain just by trying a few things out. Even if you don't make those changes in the end, you've increased your repertoire as a writer. So yes, I'm hugely, hugely passionate about edits now. So the next thing I want us to look at, again, this is really significant because this fourth significant edit that I'm doing in my novel, I'm making a major change. I'm essentially taking a character who has been alive throughout the whole novel, and I'm starting the novel with them dead. So that character makes appearances throughout the novel, so I have to edit those appearances. I have to give those appearances either to another character or rewrite them. And I have to change the way a particular character feels about this character who's now dead. So it's a really significant change. And it is a change that I would never have considered when I first came up with the idea of the novel. This character who I've now killed off, they felt like the spine that was going throughout the book. But I realized that it was essentially a spine that enabled me to build the novel on top, and I can now slide that spine out and then begin to mold and shape the novel in an even better way. So I wanted to explore that with you today, that one thing that you just absolutely would not consider doing. Because in considering it, I really feel like I've given my novel a much more significant chance of being enjoyed, of being taken up by an agent, and certainly of getting published. So here's the question. Either imagine taking out of your novel one thing that you absolutely wouldn't consider, or imagine adding something that you absolutely wouldn't consider. So one thing to either remove or to add that you just would not consider doing. So what is it that you are really holding on to, and what is it that you are absolutely refusing. So you can choose one or the other, or you can explore both within the 2 minutes. What are you holding on to? What would you absolutely not do? Off you go. Okay, 2 minutes. Yeah, this was interesting. I suppose I was approaching it and my mind was like, dude, you've already done an unbelievable edit that you wouldn't have considered, and now you're asking me to imagine another one? Like, what's left? So I just got really extreme and I imagined taking out my main character. And it was kind of fun because my mind was like, well, obviously that's not going to happen. So I was like, yeah, but just entertain it. How would you feel? What would happen? And so what started was a really interesting emotional exchange. And I suppose I would call it grief, as I was imagining losing this central character. I felt that gap, that loss. And this was really useful because there is grief in the novel and there is an absence of a character. As you know, I have already taken a character out. So it was really interesting to make contact with that feeling, and I thought, yeah, I can use this. The other place that it took me was a place that I can describe as non-attachment. So as I was imagining taking my central character out of the novel, I had to let go. I had to take myself there just for 2 minutes, but still I had to let go. And I thought, that's a really important part of the editing process. What is it that you are really clutching onto? And just imagine letting go. Doesn't mean you have to. But I realized as I was imagining letting my central character go, she, in a way, was becoming more real. She was less this person who had to be just so, and then she was becoming a person in her own right who could choose to be in my book if she wanted. So suddenly I got to see another aspect of her where she had autonomy, where she had an interesting nature about her, where she was like, yeah, okay, I choose to be your central character. Yes, if you want me in your book, I will come along and I will be in your book. And that was a really nice relationship to have struck up so late in the game, but a really nice relationship to now take through as I go into this 4th edit. So I am going to keep her. I'm going to get rid of this other one, but I feel like those 2 experiences are really useful now to take into the editing process. So again, just a couple of ideas to get your mind opening up about what it means to edit your book and the places that doing a significant edit can really take you. Open your mind, see what's there. You can just go in and explore so that you know that you have access to that room, even if you don't end up using that room. But it's only ever about increasing your repertoire as a writer and in turn building your confidence. So take that into your weekend, and I wish you all the best with your writing over the next few days and the week ahead. And I really look forward to settling down for some more exercises.